Hey Pokedad fan club, it's me Pokedad, and today we're doing another deck profile from R&B Games, which is my home league. This deck was actually built by my friend Daniel Ton, who's also part of Team Rogue Dogs. So make sure you check our Facebook page out, Team Rogue Dogs, and click the like button on that. But this is a Zygarde Carbink deck with Regirock. So we kind of just threw all of them in. We want to just power up Zygarde up as fast as we possibly can, and then just destroy our opponent. So that's the idea behind that. We actually only play two Zygarde EXs. Okay, we're gonna be playing Focus Sash in this deck, so we're okay with him with only playing two here, and then we can, if we need him again later on, we can always Sacred Ash him back in. We're using the Karina engine anyway, so having just two here is fine. He does have one thing that's really awesome about this EX is it has 190 HP. It's a fighting type, and then it has 3 attacks. The first one is called Lance Pulse for just a single fighting energy. It does 20 damage, but if there's a stadium in play, it does an additional 20 damage. So it'll do 40 damage. But think about this, if we have strong energy and a fighting stadium in play, we now go from 40 damage to 80 damage. All right, so for one single energy, we can hit for 80 on turn one. If you think about that, that's pretty powerful. By adding just an additional energy, we now can do an additional 20 damage because the first one will do 40 if there's a stadium in play. The second one does 60, but then it heals Zygarde by 30 damage. So now you can, for two energies, you can hit 100. But if you had two strong energies, you could actually hit for 120 and then heal yourself 30 every single time. So that's really, really, really cool. And then finally, if we can get him powered up with 3 energies on there, we can hit for 120. Add a strong energy. I mean, 100. Add a strong energy. That's 120. Add a fighting stadium. We're doing 140. So this is kind of like Lucario in some aspects, except that it has more HP. And I think the first attack is going to even hit harder than most Lucario decks do. And also, Zygarde has a special tool that only works for him that we'll talk about when we get to the tool cards. So anyway, that's the Zygarde EX. We also play one Zygarde. This is the dog form. And one of the reasons why we want to play this is we want to cause them to have to take 7 prizes. So by having one Zygarde in here, we can use the attack Aurora Break. It does 70 damage if we have a fighting and 2 colorless. But the cool thing about this is then if you're going against dark decks, which we know they're really big in here. If you attack a dark Pokemon, that dark Pokemon can attack the next turn. So it forces them to have to retreat into something else. So if you hit this with an Eviltal EX, they won't be able to Evil Ball you the next turn. They have to move into something else and attack with that. So we play one of those just as kind of a way to make our opponent draw 7 prizes. We also play 2 Carbinks. This is not the Safeguard one, but that's the one we recommend you use. The Safeguard one has 90 HP, has the ability Safeguard, which means it can't be hurt by EXs unless they shut the ability off with either a Silent Lab or a Hex Maniac or something like that. And then I think on the Safeguard attack, it's a fighting and a colorless energy does 40 damage. But again, remember, when we're dealing with fighting Pokemon, there's something that 40 damage doesn't seem like a lot. But again, if we have a strong energy and then we throw in a fighting stadium, now that 40 damage is now jumping up to 80 damage. So keep that in mind when you're playing with fighting Pokemon. Just because some of the numbers look a little bit smaller doesn't mean they actually are. And then Carbink actually got a break, so we're playing 2 Carbink breaks. And he has the attack Diamond Gift. And this is what we really want to try. We want to try to get Carbink early and then maybe Wally into Carbink Break, so that we can use Diamond Gift early on in the game so that we can power up our Zygardes in literally one turn. So Diamond Gift does 20 damage for one fighting energy, but then you get to take 2 energies from the discard pile, and it doesn't say special or basic, it's just any 2 energies from the discard pile, and attach them to one of your fighting type Pokemon. So ideally we want to attach it to a Zygarde. And so Carbink is kind of between the safeguard protecting him, focus sashes, and his attack diamond gift. We want to try to start with Carbink and then power up our Zygarde for mid to late game to finish off our opponent pretty quickly. All right, we got also 3 of Regirock. Okay, and I'm gonna kind of put it this way, and the proxy came out a little bit bigger than we liked, but we're playing 3 of them. Is that the right way? Oh, like that. Sorry. So we play 3 of these, and Regirock has the ability, I forget what it's called, but it basically makes all your fighting Pokemon's attacks 10 more damage. So we put 3 of these in so we can load up our bench with Regirocks, and that makes Zygarde's attack even stronger. So before we were talking about 140 damage, now we can hit 170 pretty easily with Zygarde, and we can get him powered up pretty quickly with Carbink. And so that's why we play 3 Regirock in the deck. This is the new EX. It looks like it's 180 HP. It also has an attack, but it's not going to be one that you could power it up theoretically with Carbink, but it's 3 fighting energies, and it does 100 damage. And I don't remember what does it reduce it by? It reduces it by 20, the opponent's attack by 20 for the next turn. So, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not as good as Zygarde. However, if we needed to use Regirock, we could in a pinch. All right, and then we also play 2 Shaman EXs for the setup ability. This is pretty much becoming a staple in every deck. If you want to be in competitive play, you pretty much need to play Shaman EX in your deck. So we play 2 of those for the setup. And that is our Pokemon lineup for this deck. So let's move right into our supporter line. All right, our first supporter, and this is the engine that pretty much is going to run this deck, is Karina. We're playing 4 Karinas. Karina allows you to grab a Pokemon, fighting type Pokemon, and an item card. So this is really good because we can use Karina to grab Carbink or Regirock, or we can use it to get the Zygarde out, and then we can grab a Focus Sash, or we can grab an Ultra Ball, or we can grab a VS Seeker or a Battle Compressor, whatever we need. And Karina is the engine that is used in most fighting decks. So we're going to max out on Karina because she's going to be really used the most in this deck. And Battle Compressor is very important in this deck because we've got Carbink that we want to be able to get started very early to power up the Zygarde EX. We're playing 2 Professor Sycamore. I mean, it's just a solid staple. We don't need as many because we're using Karina more, but Sycamore is going to allow us to discard our hand and draw 7 cards. So that's typical. And then N is also coming back into rotation in standard format. So we're going to play 2 N in this deck. Again, N could be great in the early game to give us 6 cards if we have like a dead hand, 6 new cards to take a look at. But also because of its the way it's worded is your opponent also shuffles their hand into their deck, and however many prize cards both players, like if I have 6 prizes left, then I draw 6 cards. But if I only have 1 prize card left, then I only get 1 card. Same thing with your opponent. So if your opponent gets really far ahead of you, you can end them and potentially disrupt their hand down to 1 or 2 cards. So N is just solid. Lysander, I think, is going to be solid so that we can pick off Shamans, or if they've retreated something that's already been damaged, we can bring it back up and take it out with Zygarde. We play 2 Wallies also in this deck because we want to go from Carbink to Carbink Break as quickly as possible. And it may not even necessarily be on turn 1, but let's say later in the game we need to get another Carbink out, we don't want to have to wait a turn to evolve it, so we can go ahead and play the Wally and get Carbink Break when all of our energy is already in the discard pile, and then we can start powering up Zygarde or Regirock or whatever. We play one Hex Maniac. We don't want to use this when Carbink is in the active because it'll shut off his Safeguard ability, but there's a lot of ability-based decks now, and I think Hex Maniac is becoming pretty much a one-of staple in most of the. Because of that, we've got Greninja Break that is highly ability-based. We now have Mega Alakazam that's going to be highly ability-based. And you've got Bronzong variants and things like that. So it's important that we play at least one Hex Maniac so we can kind of shut those abilities off and give us a reprieve for a turn or two. Playing 1-0-Sick also. This is also to help against the Night March and the Toad matchup and the Giratina matchup. All of those are very, very tough for us, especially when we're item locked. We play a lot of items, and so we need to have 0-Sick available to us just in case to maybe disrupt, get a DCE knocked off of a Toad or something like that. All right, and that is our supporter lineup for this deck. All right, we also play some tool cards. We're playing 2 Float Stones. These ideally we want to be putting on the Carbink Breaks so that as soon as we use the attack to charge up a Zygarde, then the next turn we can retreat the Carbink Break and then put Zygarde in the active and just take it out, take out whatever's in front of us. We also play 2 Focus Sashes. In a fighting deck, Focus Sash is becoming pretty much a staple now. You see that in Garchomp, in Gallade decks. You see it in Mean Shao decks. Focus Sash just really is good because it keeps them from being able to one-shot us. So that means we're going to have at least 2 turns to be able to use our Pokemon. And with Zygarde, even though he's got a massive 190 HP, there are some things that can one-shot that. By having a Focus Sash, though, Zygarde won't be one-shot, and that means we can get off several attacks with the Zygarde before he goes down. And then also, Zygarde has one special tool that's specifically for him only. You can attach it to other things, but it won't help them. If you attach Power Memory to Zygarde, he gets an additional attack. It's called All Cells Burn, and it does 200 massive damage. The only downside is you have to discard all 3 energies. So now you can see why Carbink Break can be valuable at the end of the game, or in the middle of the game, because Zygarde will have no energy left on him once you use this massive 200 attack. So you're going to have to retreat him, bring Carbink up, attach another energy to Zygarde, and then use Carbink's attack to put 2 more energies back on Zygarde. So this is why we want to play Carbink, because we can use Power Memory. We thought about doing a second one of these, but you don't need, some people are going to play 4 of this in your deck. You don't need 4 of these in your deck. The reason is with Karina, you're going to be able to search this out. Now, we did contemplate putting a second one in just in case this is prized. But as you know, Genesect had an ace spec for him, and he only ran, you were only able to run 1 in the whole deck. And so we're just going to try it out with just 1 for right now. We may bump it up to 2, but we have so many other valuable resources in the deck that we don't want to necessarily try to, if we can get away with just using 1, that's what we would prefer. All right, that's our tool cards. Let's go into some of the other item cards we have. We play 4 VS Seekers. That's pretty much just becoming standard. If you're a new player, I recommend that this is one of the very first investments you make. They are very expensive. They're running about $10 to $12 each now. But every deck that you make, if you get a play set of these, every deck you make from here on out will use them. And it's one of the best investments you can make. So VS Seeker allows you to re-grab your supporter cards out of the discard pile and reuse them. So now instead of 4 Karinas, we have the potential of 8 Karinas. Instead of 2 Lysanders, we have the potential of 6 Lysanders. Instead of 2 Ns, we have the potential of 4 Ns, and so on and so forth. So you can see how that is. we can actually throw supporters in the discard pile that are used mainly for text, like that Zero Sick or the Hex Maniac or the Wally, and then reuse it later by grabbing a VS Seeker. And we'll talk about how we do that in just a moment. We also play 4 Trainer's Mail. I've mentioned this in my other videos. Trainer's Mail allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your deck and pick any trainer cards you find there. So it can help us find our supporters. It can help us find our tool cards. This is becoming a staple also in most decks, and it's actually pretty cheap. I think it's only running for like $1.25 right now, but I have a feeling these are going to continue to rise as we get into this was Roaring Skies. Roaring Skies is probably going to go out of print soon if it hasn't already, and this card may actually see a jump. So you may want to pick those up if you don't have them already. We're running 3 Ultra Balls. We don't need a 4th one because we've got Karina in this deck. But in some cases, we actually want a Karina for an Ultra Ball so that we can grab our Shaman or so that we can get a second fighting Pokemon out. So it's good to have a couple extra Ultra Balls in there just in case. So we play 3 of those. We also play 2 switches in the deck. And the reason for this is after Zygarde uses his all cells burn attack, we need a way to get Zygarde out of the discard pot, or out of the active position. And really the best way to do that, you can't attach a float stone to him because he's got this on him. So what the best way to do is to use a switching card and switch him. So we play 1 switch, and I think we play 1 escape rope. So we've got 3 switching cards in there, and again, these are searchable by Karina. So we will we'll be able to grab those whenever we need them with Karina. We also run 2 battle compressors. Battle compressor is going to help us get energy in the discard pile and also those tech supporters that we need. Battle compressor allows you to take 3 cards out of your deck and put them in the discard pile. And so by having 2 of them, we can again Karina for it and then put the energy in there so that Carbink, energy in the discard pile so that Carbink can then put energy on Zygarde for us. We play 1 of Sacred Ash because we may need to recycle our Zygardes or our Carbinks or whatever. And then that's all we have for our item cards. We play a lot of them because we have Karina in the deck, and it's just so important for us to have to be able to use that. All right, as far as our stadiums, we're playing 3 fighting stadiums. Again, this is just going to power up our attacks. Any EX attack, whenever we attack against an opposing EX, it does an additional 20 damage. And then remember, Zygarde's first attack by itself does an additional 20 damage just by having a stadium in play. So by having Fighting Stadium, we're literally giving him a boost of 40 just for that. That's all the stadiums we're playing in the deck, just 3. And so let's get into our energy count. In any fighting deck, you'd be really, really foolish not to run 4 strong energies, which is the max you can run. Strong energy, remember, allows your fighting Pokemon to attack for an additional 20 damage. But remember, it can only be put on a fighting type Pokemon. So Shaman EX cannot get this. If you put it on Shaman, it'll go straight to the discard pile. And then we run 5 just standard fighting energies. So that gives us a total of 9 energies for this deck. Anyway, guys, that's our deck profile for Zygarde EX. Hit that thumbs up button for me. We'd really appreciate we'd like to get 20 thumbs up on this video. Also, put your comments below and tell us what you think of the deck. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We value each and every one of you. And remember, go to Team Rogue Dogs on Facebook and hit the like button and become part of our community at Team Rogue Dogs. Anyway, guys, this is PokeDad signing off. We'll talk to you later. Bye.